Hello, my dudes. Today, I want to talk about HGTV. I recently made a video about house flippers and the home renovation obsession, and in that video, I talked a little bit about how HGTV has influenced our home tastes. But today, I want to talk about HGTV as a genre and some of the impacts it has made on culture. Let's start with a little overview, okay? What is the appeal of HGTV? If you are unfamiliar, it is a channel all about home decor, renovation, design. It's literally home and garden television. The channel has been around since the 90s.
Room by room for spring.
And the focus of the channel has shifted a lot since its inception. Originally, it highlighted a lot more like humble little home decor tips, some interior design, some small home improvements, and how to create a space that's really you, like changing your pillows seasonally. But now HGTV has transformed into a, spoiler, hyper-capitalist hellscape that'll teach you how to flip a house and create your own real estate empire. So HGTV really became a cultural phenomenon around the early 2010s with shows like House Hunters, The Property Brothers, Love It or List It. The concepts for these shows were simple. Your house is ugly and we can help you fix it, or we'll just help you buy a new one. Either way, your current living space is unacceptable and you need professional help from our wacky duo of hosts. And the hosts really are crucial to the success of each show's brand. Over time, this formula started to take place. You'll often find two co-hosts with opposing skill sets, man with hammer and woman with paint swatch. Traditional, fun. And depending on which show you're watching, there is a very loose use of professional here. Are these people actually experts with years of experience and knowledge in their field? Maybe. Or they're just really good on camera, which is important to be a host. We need that snappy banter. So let me start with one of my original favorites, Love It or List It. We have designer Hillary versus real estate agent David. They're played as frenemies, they've got this really snarky, competitive energy.
I have better things to do than to waste my time arguing with you.
Oh, no, you don't.
Yes, I do.
Oh, really?
Of course I do.
You don't?
Yes, I do. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, I'll correct you even if you're right.
It's delightfully bitchy, I would say. They're gonna renovate your house, try to get it closer to what you want, and in the end you get to choose whether you're going to love your old house or you're gonna list it and go buy something else. So obviously this is reality TV. Everyone's hamming it up. Maybe they're creating kind of fake conflict. You gotta make it interesting. And the funny thing to note about any of these shows is do the producers really want what is best for you, the guest, or what's gonna make the best TV?
For the homeowners here, this is a renovation project.
Big change here is that
And for Big Code, it's a TV show.
The couple claims the renovations were disastrous, alleging their $140,000 was essentially used to create a stage set for this television series.
Caitlin Flanagan wrote this piece called Beware the Open Plan Kitchen. Just as the mild stimulant of decorating scents made way for the Adderall of House Hunters, so did the latter prepare viewer and network for the speedball of flipping. Flipping is now the core of the network's most successful shows, and which may be the most dangerous part of a national obsession that has caused us all great grief in the past, and possibly even spurred that global financial crisis. It all began with Property Brothers. My favorite dorky Canadian twins. You've got real estate agent Drew versus contractor Jonathan, and one of them is Zooey Deschanel's partner. I'll just let you guess. But again, we see agent versus contractor, real estate versus renovation. I think undoubtedly the Property Brothers are uniquely appealing to certain viewers who are attracted to men because, hello, you've got clean-cut suit guy and flannel-wearing handyman. I will say I'm partial to Jonathan myself. Now, this is not really relevant, but I just love this. From Flanagan's piece. They had both wanted to be actors, but no luck. Drew spent $100,000 trying to break into the acting world. Jonathan wanted to be a magician with a big David Copperfield type of show until someone stole all his props and he had to file for bankruptcy. While writing this, I told Nathan that. I was like, oh my God, did you know the Property Brothers used to be actors and one of them was a magician? And he was like, yes. You've told me this multiple times. I guess over the years I have repeatedly learned and forgotten this particular fun fact. Next up, we have Fixer Upper. Chip and Joanna, baby. This show is based in Waco, Texas, which previously was probably most known for being the site of a deadly standoff between the ATF and a religious cult called the Branch Davidians. But we're rebranding, and now arguably there's a new cult in town. Magnolia Market, come visit the compound. The branding of Fixer Upper is very wholesome. This is Texas, evangelical Christians. We're all about family, marriage. And Chip and Joanna's relationship is central to the show. She's the more serious designer wife. He's the silly, goofy contractor husband. Very traditional gender roles, unsurprisingly. Flanagan wrote, HGTV has always had its roots in a quiet social conservatism. Once the network started putting a married couple with star power on a show and featuring not just the houses they were flipping, but also their own homes and their children, it jump-started the ratings streak that made it so successful. This shirt that I'm wearing today is much of their doing, okay? Chip and Joanna popularized modern farmhouse or farmhouse chic. I'm talking shiplap, farmhouse sinks, barn doors, clawfoot tubs, exposed beams. And I do like some of these features, but overall, modern farmhouse is definitely not my number one aesthetic. This was extremely popular for a certain brand of family in the past 5 to 10 years, though now I think it's seen as a little bit overdone and it's going out of style. So I actually had not seen Fixer Upper before, and I ended up watching a few episodes and I enjoyed it, okay? I'm an HGTV fan. I'm not exempt from this, but I could have sworn Chip and Joanna got divorced years ago. I am so confused. This genuinely feels like a Mandela effect for me. But I guess what really happened was that the show just put a lot of pressure on their relationship, understandably so, and that's why they left Fixer Upper, but they are in fact still together, still married, and collaborating on a lot of projects. What a good Christian couple. And as I mentioned before, the Gaines family owns the Magnolia Empire, which is massive. They have that retail market in Waco at the Silos, plus a cafe, a coffee shop. This place gets tons of visitors. They also have a very prominent home decor collection at Target, Hearth and Hand, and you can't overstate the significance of that, making Chip and Joanna accessible to the masses. The Target-loving mommies will be drawn to that framed display every time. And most recently, they were part of a media company deal that acquired a sister network of HGTV, which is now the Magnolia Network. So they're literally in the HGTV extended family, and they have the power of having their own network. Overall, Chip and Joanna are a great example of the HGTV ecosystem, okay? This whole empire is the goal of what HGTV wants to create from its most successful hosts. When they find a pair that works, they are gonna stick together. The franchises expand. There are endless iterations of House Hunters. There's the entire Property Brothers universe, spin-offs of spin-offs. But before we continue, this portion of today's video is sponsored by Bombas. You know when you reach that age where you get really excited about being gifted good socks? I am definitely there, and the socks I want the most are Bombas. I'm very excited to be working with them. I've been a fan for years. I even bought a few gift sets for people over the holidays. Bombas are known to be extremely comfortable and high quality socks. This time I got the women's modern rib quarter socks. Love this color. And these little quarter frilly socks. Two slightly different vibes for the summer. They have any kind of sock you could need with tons of prints and colors to choose from. Another thing I appreciate is that they donate one item for each item purchased. And to date, they've donated over 100 million essentials to people experiencing homelessness. Things like socks, shirts, and underwear, which are very much needed. Next time you're shopping for basics, feel good and do good with Bombas. New customers can get 20% off their first purchase. Just go to bombas.com/Tiffany and use code Tiffany20 at checkout. Next up, I want to highlight flip or flop. So while researching this, I accidentally fell down an entire Tarek rabbit hole. He is all about the classic, boring entrepreneur cliches. I just want to inspire people to work hard. I started from nothing. I lived in a garage.
No, but like legitimately, this is where it all started. I started at zero from this garage, and I became the person that I am today by learning how to pick up the phone and talk to people. So
I briefly considered reading his book because I had a lot of unanswered questions, but I couldn't even get through the 2-minute sample of the audiobook.
I got started flipping houses the hard way. I worked my ass off, got my ass kicked a few times, and then figured out for myself what worked and what didn't. That's the difference between school learning and street learning. Street learning never lets you forget. You can read how to ride a bike, or you can get out on the street, crash a few times, and bleed a little bit.
Tarek was a young, successful real estate agent in Orange County, California, and that's where he met his wife, Christina. They were working together, and then the 2008 housing crash happened. And this is a story Tarek has mentioned many, many times in every interview. Their family went from having a $6,000 mortgage to living in a $700 apartment. It's their way of saying, you know, the recession was hurting everybody. And I don't doubt that. I'm sure it was a tricky time to be a real estate agent. But obviously, Tarek mentions this part of their story so often because it makes them seem relatable. They went through tough times too. They almost lost everything. But anyway, after the crash, they eventually recovered. They ended up buying a new house. Don't worry, they didn't stay in an apartment for long. They started a flipping business, and that is when they created the show Flip or Flop. So let's watch some of these episodes together.
I'm Tarek.
And I'm Christina.
We buy the ugliest, wow, the nastiest, the most rundown houses that we can find.
The bigger the disaster, the better the makeover.
I will say, to be fair, these sorts of homes typically do require investors because the typical buyer can't afford all of that cost usually. It messes with your financing. Okay, sure. But this is the whole crux of Flip or Flop. They are specifically buying foreclosed homes, auctioned homes. This is a show about a California couple capitalizing on the housing crash. And I actually grew up in Orange County. I was living there at the time when they were filming the show. I'm from South Orange County, but you know, my family was always renters, got free and reduced lunch, yada yada. So on one hand, it was interesting to go back and watch these because it's always a little interesting to see a show that's based in your area. I think that's why HGTV has so many different location spin-offs of different shows. But also watching this with the awareness of how hard the recession hit people everywhere, but obviously, I knew what was going on in my county. It obviously feels a little icky. It's too close to home. In the show, Tarek and Christina focus on up-and-coming, gentrifying neighborhoods, which in this show tend to be in North OC, in historically Hispanic or Latino areas, such as Santa Ana. And it's important to note, the foreclosure crisis hit Hispanic and Black communities the hardest. They had higher rates of foreclosures compared to white households, and, as Michelle Lerner wrote, historically, Black and Hispanic homeowners have held the majority of their net worth in their homes, at a higher rate than white homeowners. Obviously, foreclosures are awful for anyone, but it's even more of a financial hit when that is where most of your investments are going. So with all of that context, it makes the show even more interesting to watch.
We design our house flips with neutral colors to appeal to the most possible buyers. But Spanish tiles does not have to mean bright colors and patterns. There are many neutral options available that are still true to the Spanish look.
I couldn't believe that they said they don't want this.
We're not thinking just that kind of Spanish style.
You mean the cool, colorful tile with patterns and parrots? You're joking. They have all of these interesting options. They're trying to go for something Spanish style, and they end up with plain white subway tiles. This is why flippers are the worst. Again, I talked more about that in the last video, but it's just so sad, so boring.
The rehab of this 1920s bungalow is taking much longer than we ever thought possible.
It almost looks like we're making some progress. It's only been, a month sitting here?
Taking a house that was built in the 1920s down to the studs and rebuilding it from scratch? We should be done and ready to sell this house by now.
Oh yeah, totally. An entire gut remodel of a whole house should take less than a month, right? It's so annoying when permits take time. Yes, I agree. Bureaucracy can be frustrating or slow. I feel bad for the average homeowner who's going through that, but I don't feel bad for a flipper. So in this episode, this ended up taking 60 days to finish the renovation and get back on the market, and they made a profit of $73,000. Katie McDonough wrote, "Goodbye, Flip or Flop." In recent years, as HGTV has leaned harder into God and country nostalgia in its real estate programming, Flip or Flop stood out for its unintentional candor about housing as a commodity. There were no sweet young couples looking for forever homes, no downtowns to be revitalized, just ambient scumminess. Airing its last episode in 2022 after 10 seasons, Flip or Flop asked a simple question: what if the foreclosure crisis actually rocked? That whole passage is such a banger. So yeah, let's talk a little bit more about taking advantage of the housing crash. It's just wild to watch a show that is literally about the most blatant get-rich-quick flipper schemes. Right after the recession, the housing crash, just gleefully snatching up foreclosures. Later seasons would move away from this explicit kind of ghoulishness, swapping out foreclosure auctions for more subdued language around the couple having a lead on a great deal. But the beating heart of the show never changed all that much. Season 1, Episode 13, The Foreclosure Heebie-Jeebies. First of all, that episode title alone, you might as well just say, poor people, gross.
89 properties going to auction today in Orange County.
89?
89. This is the craziest housing market in decades, but in all the turmoil, I just see opportunity. A year ago, we bought a foreclosed condo at auction. Flipped it, and we made 20 G's in 30 days. Since then, we flipped 4 more properties, each bigger than the last. Higher the stakes, the bigger the reward.
This is part of the really interesting framing in this show. Again, the couple is presented as these like scrappy, struggling entrepreneurs. They're risking it all.
And on top of that, you have to pay for these houses in cash.
Okay, so honey, what are we saying? We're spending about $250,000 on it?
Are you sure you want to risk that much money? I mean, we have maxed out all our credit cards. We borrowed against our rental property. I don't know. It's just really scary.
Well, what's the worst that can happen?
We lose it all?
We're putting our entire life savings into flipping houses. If it doesn't work out, my family's in big trouble.
And yes, while we see them profiting from the housing crash, you know, it's somehow more okay because they had a tough time for a little bit too. It's like, okay, first of all, duh, everyone was affected by the Great Recession. Thank you. But it's also funny because it's like, what is it? Are you broke and you're hard on your luck and you're struggling? Or did you just talk about your rental property and being able to take out all this extra debt? Like, those aren't things that like truly poor, struggling people have. The class dynamics are so interesting. And again, in terms of like the sensitivity for the audience, the show premiered in 2013 when many families were still reeling from the recession. A lot of people never recovered financially. But anyway, at least for its first season, this is how Tarek and Christina of Flip or Flop are represented. These are creative business people. And if anything, we should be so lucky that they are cleaning up these houses and improving the neighborhood. Now, I very quickly want to wrap up the Tarek El Moussa lore because as much as I want to get deep into it, we've done enough. Long story short, Tarek and Christina end up having a pretty rough public divorce. They like keep working together on the show for a couple more seasons though, which was interesting. And then when they ended Flip or Flop, they both got spin-off shows, of course. And Tarek ends up remarrying, and who does he marry other than Heather from Selling Sunset?
Hi, I'm Christina.
I'm Heather.
Wait, no. That's not right.
Must feel that bleach.
Well, I guess it is confusing.
This is a dream reality TV crossover. And now they have a new show called The Flipping El Moussas, which I love to think of as like the frickin' El Moussas, and not like the El Moussas who flip. You know what I mean? And I have to mention the scandal about Tarek's quote-unquote biggest flip yet.
The biggest flip I have ever done in my life. And
his plan for these rent control bungalows where residents, including disabled seniors, have lived for years
is we're going to tear it down and build a brand new 138 unit apartment complex.
This great, excellent opportunity that he found is the result of years of violence and trauma and abuse against senior and disabled tenants.
And through all the backlash, he like kept trying to kind of deflect and act like it wasn't his responsibility. All of his flipping work has been icky, obviously, but this project specifically, like now he's really trying to present himself as like this like real estate investor king, trying to again gleefully brag about this massive project, this opportunity. It's like, dude, again, the people are not going to put up with your shit for very long. Like, yes, of course, there's a huge market. There are a bunch of fanboys who love this type of shit and eat it up, but there's also real people who are just trying to have somewhere to live. And no, they're not going to applaud you for trying to buy up this property, evict everybody, and then gentrify the neighborhood, raise the rents, put up another luxury building. No, thank you. Now let's talk a little bit about HGTV's quantity over quality. I think this channel, this network, this genre has definitely been suffering from oversaturation. There are too many shows, too many spin-offs. They're really throwing everything at the wall, and some things from their superstars are sticking, but a lot of it's just meh. And another conflict you have is like, once you as a host get very successful, how could you possibly keep up with doing good renovations if you're expected to do like 10 or 15 each season? Now, obviously, I know the hosts are barely involved in the actual work. I am under no impression that they're genuinely like the general contractor on the project. They just show up and go, how's it going? Let me hold a hammer. But regardless, production still does have to be involved with tons of moving pieces as all of these projects go on. Some of these shows claim to have like a 24-hour turnaround, some more like a week renovation, others take months. And regardless, these are very short timelines because home renovations famously take way way longer than you can ever anticipate. And that's without even considering the slowdown effect that occurs from the filming. Crews have talked about how frustrating it is where they're trying to actually get the work done, you know, the renovation, and they get like stopped or interrupted by the production. There is serious, potentially dangerous work going on with a lot of things getting knocked down and a lot of debris in the air. So these conditions can actually end up being not just inefficient and maybe unprofessional, but also unsafe for everybody involved. The next layer of this oversaturation problem, or like being overextended, is how many previous contestants or guests from these shows claim that the work was done really badly, that their house was like destroyed, which again really sucks, but it's also not that surprising if the focus is more so on creating the image of a nicely renovated home, not so much about actually doing that project well. Ultimately, this quantity over quality problem is not even just about the sheer number of shows, but it's also about, again, promoting that idea to this audience that you can do it too, that anyone at home could be capable of also flipping a house or doing this kind of work. And ironically, HGTV has shows about flips gone wrong, which of course is great. You know, everyone loves a little disaster, and then it gets to be fixed and beautiful by the end of the episode. Very satisfying. But like, in a big way, HGTV is creating the problem. They're encouraging people to like, go try to flip your house, do a little renovation, do a DIY, and they get to capitalize on coming in and fixing it. I find that really interesting. HGTV has influenced a lot of people to either get into projects that they can't really handle, to have this kind of false confidence, or they're convincing people that they should also become profit-obsessed landlords, flippers, investors. It's so glamorous. Be part of the owning class. And we definitely do not need more of this. Here are some quotes from the Citations Needed podcast. HGTV functions as a veritable love letter to the capitalist housing market. These shows champion the process of gentrification as forward-thinking investment, while casting flippers and gentrifiers as saviors of what they view as dying or crumbling neighborhoods. But at what cost do these glossy, get-rich-quick reality shows entertain us? What ideologies do they promote? And how do they erase the working class, often black and brown families whose housing was condemned, and communities systemically neglected, all before the cameras began rolling? Of course, I have to mention the show The Curse with Nathan Fielder and Emma Stone. I actually haven't finished the season yet, so no spoilers. But the show satirizes this exact concept of like, quote unquote, well-meaning white couple moving into this up-and-coming neighborhood.
There's no such thing as a perfect city, but to me, this city is as close as it comes. That's why we're proud to call Espanola my home. Oh, shit. Our home. This isn't your typical home flipping show. My homes are reflecting the local communities. Come on.
This thing that you're doing right now, it's helping the community. It's immune to criticism.
Anyway, can't even describe it. Incredible show. Ultimately, when you're watching a lot of these shows, HGTV just doesn't want you to think about who used to live here. We often see the hosts making fun of the mess, the disgusting stains and smells. But still, they don't want us to think too deeply about those prior tenants. Who were they? What were they going through? No need to wonder how or why they lost their home. Only that you got it, and hopefully at a good discount, due to its less than ideal condition. This is purely a fun business transaction. Don't think about the people involved. So I found this article by Ann Derrick Gaio, which summarizes this whole issue very well. It's a response to this other article from 2017, We Bought a Crack House, by Catherine John. By the way, I apologize if I'm pronouncing that surname incorrectly. Please let me know. Basically, this family bought this old Victorian home in Toronto. It was in bad condition, but they got it for such a great price and they figured, you know what? We can fix it up. Gaio wrote, quoting John, "We weren't particularly handy, but we'd seen all the home reno shows. How hard could it be? What seems intended to have been a zany tale of what happens when your home improvement TV show fantasies don't go as planned didn't go quite as planned." The thing about this house was it didn't just need a lot of work, it was actually a rooming house and it still had tenants. And as the family does their walkthrough with their young child, first of all, why did you bring a kid along to this? They found people all over the house, some struggling with addiction. And the writer exploits this experience in her piece. Beneath the grime, dust, junk, and assorted drug paraphernalia was a potentially stunning home. We bought a crack house, we joked, but it was our crack house. house. We would restore the Grand Dam to its former glory. We had planned on living there during the reno, but I started having nightmares about my unborn baby inhaling crack fumes and my son playing with syringes in the backyard. There is a lot to that. Why would you write that? Why would you write that way? Gaia wrote, readers were upset with John's callous indifference to the residents she was displacing in this rapidly gentrifying neighborhood, and the way she positioned herself as a victim of their circumstances. There's no denying that John's article was classist, out of touch, and insensitive, but these sorts of stories find success all the time. John's error was that she broke the cardinal rule of any successful house flipping or finding tale. Erase the immediate past and context from which you plucked your new property. And finally, final thoughts. Ultimately, again, I think a big part of my beef with HGTV is the fact that it is emboldening regular people to do things that they have no experience in. To clarify, I think it's great to learn new things, pick up some home improvement skills. That's awesome. If you want to work on your own house, sure. But again, pretty unskilled, not very knowledgeable people working on houses and flipping them and selling them to unsuspecting buyers, that's what I have a problem with. Being a flipper doesn't look like a shitty job. It sounds glamorous to be able to brand yourself as an investor. And again, HGTV is not the only influence here. As I talked about in the last video, online we have tons of people promoting this idea of being a real estate tycoon, starting from the bottom, and eventually you're gonna own, hundreds of properties. It's absolutely no secret that real estate can be a key to this incredible promise of passive income. And as I mentioned in the renovation video, again, my beef with flipping and these sorts of renovations that are so careless is just like, it's so frustrating because they could be done well. They could be done with more care. Renovations should take a lot of time and effort and attention. I did find a few shows on HGTV that seem to be a little bit more respectful and more focused on like slower quality renovations, such as the show Houses with History, which I did enjoy. I appreciate that the hosts really geek out on this. They really care about the era that the house was built in and how to incorporate vintage or antique pieces in unique ways. They just really care, and they seem to spend good quality time on each project. I think each one takes like 6 months, which is pretty unheard of for a TV show. They're able to strike that balance of making things functional but still keeping them interesting. And I appreciate that they're working on houses that otherwise would be condemned. Not many other people would be willing or able to take on these kind of projects and address the major foundational issues and other things. So I do think it is possible to do home and garden television right, do some justice, but maybe do it in a way that, again, is more about quality and care and true community rather than just profit. But we're talking about a massive, television empire, so it's probably kind of a silly amount of wishful thinking there, but is that not what this channel is all about? All right, that is all. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks again to Bombas for sponsoring today's episode. Check them out in the description if you're interested, and stay tuned for future internet analysis videos. I'm just gonna keep this background up forever. This is my newly flipped home. Actually, I love the natural light. I love the big bay windows in my home. Okay, thanks. Bye.